Okay, so we have taken care of that part. That's good. So I was talking about Trenchbroom, the mapping editor, earlier, and you can get it here from this URL. I will put this stream as a VOD on YouTube, and then put the links in the video descriptions, right? So you can get it here. I think it's also, yeah, it's for OS X and Linux, Windows. And it's a very cool tool, actually. It's kind of a modern, really modern editor for not only Quake 2, but also Quake, Hexen 2, and I believe also Half-Life, maybe. So that's the mapping editor we need. Next, we need the compiling tools for the map. So when we make a map in Trenchbroom, the file that is being saved to disk, and we will see that later, is a map file. It's called .map, like the extension is map. But this map file is actually not readable by the engine itself. So when we start up the game, we cannot read the map file that comes out of Trenchbroom. And this is not because like Trenchbroom is flawed. The original tools work the same. This map file gets read into a tool called BSP, or whatever you want to call it, but this is the tool we need to actually make the file readable, so to speak, by the Quake engine. So what it does is it goes through the map file out of that came out of Trenchbroom, and it creates something called a binary space partitioning tree, like a binary space partition. It creates that out of the world. This is an optimization, and I probably do another video about that because there is a lot to say about that in itself. About how this format actually works, the BSP format in Quake. So yeah, but this is another topic, and all we need to know is, for now at least, so you should definitely check that out. Like, it's important to understand this, I believe, but that we will kind of defer to another time. So when we feed the map file out of Trenchbroom into the BSP compiler, there is actually a file coming out when the program has finished running that's called ourmap.bsp. So it's a BSP file, and that file is actually readable by Quake 2. Okay. So for data, I don't know what this does. Actually, it's probably an, I don't know, inspection tool for the map. The RAD tool calculates all the lighting using radiosity. So when we put lights in our map, and we will do that later, then the Quake uses light maps, and so it's kind of pre-computed lighting. It doesn't do that dynamically. And so the RAD tool will take the BSP file and do all the create all the pre-computed light maps and put them into the BSP file again. The Viz file, Viz program is an optimization. It calculates potential visible set and also potentially hearable set, I believe. And this is just when you're in the world, if the character is also an optimization, actually. If you're somewhere, the player is somewhere in the world, you don't need to see all of the parts in the world. And this Viz file is actually, or not the Viz file, excuse me. The Viz program kind of pre-computes the locations, or how to explain that. So it has some data in it that tells the engine during runtime for which position in the world the player is, what parts of the world can potentially be visible. So the engine doesn't need to render everything, but only the parts that could be visible from that position of the player, okay? Yeah, so, and you don't need to compile these tools yourself, actually, and this is quite cool that, as you can see, it's updated fairly recently. Even for such an old game, there's still a lot of support, and really appreciate the effort of the of this person making this. You can just grab the precompiled binaries here, right? So there's an alternative. These Quake 2 compiling utilities, and they work really well. The problem is I could not create light maps when the map was using Targa image files. It would only accept the Quake specific wall image file for textures. So maybe I also did something wrong, but I couldn't find a flag to actually use other image files for textures other than the wall file. And I want to use Targa files because they have they're easier to work with now. They not only have the higher color depth, but also they're just easier to work with, because Quake, as I said earlier, the color map PCX, it uses indexed colors, and if we actually want to kind of be 100% Quake 2 conformant, then we would have to go, like, if we create a texture in Photoshop and want to get it into Quake 2, we would have to convert it to this indexed format that Quake 2 uses. And I kind of just don't want to deal with that, quite frankly. Next tool is the Md2 Viewer. Md2 is the model format of Quake 2 for items, for example, for static objects that are in the world, but also, of course, character models. And sometimes quite handy to have a tool to kind of inspect a model file. So there's a tool called the Quake Model Editor, and I needed this because when I used Blender to get the model out of the to export the model out of Blender, it wouldn't allow me to put the correct metadata into the file, so it was usable by Quake or Trenchbroom. What is that? Yeah, that's an add-on for Python that allows us to create our modeled thing from Blender into the Md2 format I just talked about. And you need the IO mesh Md2 2.8 Python script. Okay. Next up, here you can get the Pak Explorer I just showed earlier to inspect the Pak files. And the Pak file is just a compressed format like a zip, and I believe maybe the compression is not really different from zip, but you cannot open it with 7-zip or something like that. You need something like that, and that's just how Quake stores, Quake 2 stores the data content. So I was using Blender 2.8 to do my tests. Where is it? Blender 2.8. Sorry. Here. 2.81. Yeah, that's just Blender. I hope everyone knows that. It's just a very cool modeling editor like Maya or 3ds Max or something like that. Just actually free version So next I'm going to use the texture pack, and for modeling our map, actually this has nothing to do with the item, but I want to be able to use nice textures. And there's a guy called, or girl, I don't know, Macon, and yeah, who created these really nice textures. And you can get the source textures, which are contained in Targa format, from this Google Drive link. So very cool. And also I want to mention this very cool site by Fabian Sanglar. I don't know how to pronounce his last name actually. Fabien Sanglar. I believe maybe he's comes from France. And so sorry if I pronounce the name incorrectly, but this site is pretty awesome. It contains so much information about programming and all the id-tech stuff. He also wrote 2 books about Wolfenstein 3D and the first Doom, where he explains a lot of technical details about those games. And he has these short blog posts about how actually Quake is architected, Quake 2 in that case. But he also has something about Doom 3, Quake 3, and Quake 1. And yeah, I really recommend reading all this. So that really helped me get started with Quake. So, and lastly, there is a guy or a YouTube channel called Dump Truck DS, and he has really cool tutorials about Trenchbroom, the mapping editor. It's here this playlist, Trenchbroom 2 tutorials, and really concise tutorials to follow, and you will get really good at, I think, or the basics of Trenchbroom, but also more advanced stuff you will get into very quickly using these tutorials. So very cool resource. Thank you also to dumptruck_ds. Okay, so let's see what's up next. So this sounds like a lot of stuff. The setup maybe is a little bit involved, but then it should be quite straightforward, I guess. Okay, let me see. Have I forgotten to mention anything? So we got Quake running. Oh yeah, so when you download all these tools, kind of maybe show it here. I made a folder called Quake 2 Dev, right? And there are maybe more folders now than actually necessary because I was experimenting a lot. But what we need in this folder is the installation of Trenchbroom. I have it here, right? It's just our Trenchbroom. Here's the Trenchbroom executable. I have a working directory where I use for all the maps I create. So it's kind of a temporary directory where when the BSP is created and the visibility and the radiosity, it uses the working directory as a scratch directory. And I copied basically this folder structure from this tutorial. So he shows how to do it in Quake 1, but many things apply to Quake 2 as well. So now we have that, and then I have a tools directory, right? And we don't need all of that. What we need is the Blender plugins I was talking about, right? It's this Python script. We need the map compilers. I put them in map compilers too because these are the older version. Map compilers 2, Windows 64. We actually don't need Windows 64, but here are these programs: the 4BSP, 4Rad, and 4Viz. That's the 3 of those 4 we're going to use. And Then here's the Md2 Viewer where we can load models. Let me show that maybe for a second. So I was here. Where's the tries file? So you can see the guy can load the skin. Okay, maybe like this. And you can go through all the animations that are contained in this file. And as you can see already, the model and the weapon are two different files. So if we maybe load the sword, sounds good, okay. And then of course we would also have to load the skin for that. And so let's see, you can see pain. So that's like a hit animation, right? Or here we have attack. Okay, that's an interesting attack. I don't know if this actually does too much. Salute. Yeah, so quite convenient. Also really old tool by some guy of the map community, for Quake community. So pretty nice. We don't need that. And this is the Quake model editor. Why do I have a second one here? This is actually the one I was talking about, but we will look at that later. Okay, Quake 2 dev, base Quake 2. This is just the same directory actually we have in the source. We copied from the original game directory to the source code directory. Where is it now? I have two of those. That's great. Right, it's this one. Okay. Excuse me. I was repos to move over here. This one. We copied from the game folder into the source code directory. All right. Let's see. Ooh, my camera is quite bright. All right. Okay, I think that's all we need. Oh, one more thing. We must not forget to actually make a folder called pics and put the colormap.pcx into it. And if you don't know how to get this color map pcx, like we showed earlier, it's in this pack file. So you can use the Pak Explorer, right? Open the pack 0, go to pics and color map pcx. And I believe you can do, say, extract to, and then you can choose a directory and extract it out of the pack file. So we have that, right? And then put it into Quake Dev, pics and color map pcx, right? And I actually, so the tools directory, when we start the radiosity tool, it is actually looking for the pics for the color map file. So, and the thing is, and I don't know why actually, it looks for this directory specifically here, but this is, I think I call it from this directory. I called the program from this directory. So I think that's just why it needs to be here. Okay, so let's actually create a map, I guess. Oh, one more thing. I was talking about these textures by Macon, right? And we have to put them into base Quake 2 textures, and I made a folder called Mac1. And this folder contains all these Targa textures. They need to be in there. And this directory or this setup of directories actually resembles what is into pack0. But if we, it's kind of an override. If there is a models directory or a textures directory, it will look into this textures directory instead of pack0. I made an underscore to make sure it's not being used actually by Trenchbroom. So Trenchbroom will look into this directory. So if we start Trenchbroom, we make a new map, and then we go to, so these are all the options you have, and here's Quake 2, right? And so let me see, open preferences, Quake 2, and we set the game path to Quake 2 dev, like our root directory of our Quake development stuff, right? All the tools and so on. This one probably also not needed. So actually, let me comment that or edit that, rename that. So I think, I don't know, this is confusing why there's also a textures folder, but let's see. Okay, so lost my train of thought there a little bit. That's fine. Okay, but we set this here, okay? Already done this, and we click OK, and we're presented with this thing here. And if we go to face, now I probably should deactivate my camera. 1 second. All right, we can see we don't have, or we can see that there is nothing. So if we go down here to show, this is all the available textures, and it looks into the base Quake 2 textures directory, right? These are all the textures that are available to Trenchbroom. And when we say Mac 1, it will take a little bit because, yeah, I don't know, it's not as fast when using Targa textures. Hello. Okay, so now we have all the textures available here. And actually, before we can use these, there's one more step we need to take. And that is, we go into Trenchbroom, we go into games, and then Quake 2, and then into game config, right? This is how the original looks like. And this basically is just a definition of all the formats and a lot of other stuff. As you can see here, textures, it kind of tells us the extension is a wall, the format is a wall. So the original file format of Quake 2. So in order to use Targa textures, we actually need to edit this file, and I have this copied in my clipboard actually. So this is a new entry we need to use, right? So now it says a JPEG, and also with the E version, Targa PNG format image, and the other things stay the same, the last two lines. So now we save this, and we should be able to use the Targa textures. This is already the original file. I have done this previously. This is just a backup file. I've done this previously, so it always looks for gameconfig.cfg. So as you can see, I've already done this here. Okay, good.